So we'll go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a prepared individual and a survivalist in today's day and age. Back on the show with me today is Jamie Franks. As always, Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be back. Good to be here.
Always great to be back. Always great to have you here. Always great to catch up. We caught up a little bit before this, and we're going to try and catch up a little bit less when this show starts and get into the good stuff. I have a feeling because, you know, we've said it before, you and I can get on these and turn them into 4-hour podcasts. But obviously crazy stuff happening right now. Hurricanes, gas prices, whatever. I was just in Florida last week. I left Florida on Monday, right as hurricane, what is it?
Idalia or Idalia, something like
Idalia, something like that is coming through, and I guess it's already passed over Florida, and apparently it's moving into Georgia tonight. So anybody out there that is listening in Florida, I hope we hope that you are safe, and if you are not and need anything, please reach out. Obviously, that's what this ZERT network is all about. And then if you are in Georgia and are being prepared for whatever's coming, obviously stay safe out there and trust your training, I guess, if you will. It's funny.
I mean, that is a huge asset of ZERT is like the membership network. So if the ZERT members are, training correctly and preparing themselves correctly, then I mean, that can be a huge leg to stand on. Reaching out and expanding your network. You can't, unfortunately, I think we're all in love with this idea of like, I can survive forever by myself, but when you really peel it back, that's really not realistic.
No,
you need a team. There definitely is safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers, that community aspect. I mean, it's what still attracts people to ZERT, and it's what has kept the membership the way that it is. It's that community. I mean, even I spoke to a good friend of mine who's a ZERT member down in Savannah, and when I talked to him this morning, he was like, just getting prepared. And I said, okay, well, when's it supposed to happen, or when's it supposed to come? And he said, tonight by like 8:00. And he filled up the bathtubs with the water, made sure the generators had gas, and he was like, I'm ready to prepare food by whatever means necessary, right? So, I mean, if it's a situation where you're going to lose power for 2 days, obviously you can grill with charcoal, you can grill with propane gas. I mean, there's plenty of ways to prepare food. You're not busting out your canned goods, as in, like it's a fallout. But again, he is prepared, and I know that he put something up on the Georgia page this morning. So I think talking about the bathtubs, we used to do that, obviously in the winter, up here, just preparing for power outages and ice storms and such. So always good to have that kind of information. So
that's a thing that I've started giving to people for gifts, because number one, it's something that like most people, I think most regular people, assuming that those of us that are like us are kind of abnormal. But
just a little.
Yeah, like a lot of people that just don't think of this stuff on their own. It's actually a very inexpensive little gift that you can give people. But now they make and it comes in a little box. I'm trying to think like now you can get like cans of beer that are in a 4-pack, not a 6-pack, like the 4-pack.
Yep.
So it's in a box about that size, and it's this little like water bladder that you put in your bathtub. Like putting water into the bathtub itself is one thing, but this is a sealed plastic, like food grade bladder, that you open the box, roll it out in the bottom of the bathtub. And then like, it's kind of like a condom that goes over the spout for your bathtub, and you turn it on and it fills the bathtub, and it keeps all your water, clean and sealed. And so you won't have, soap scum and, mildew and debris and,
right. Life hack: if you're preparing that, clean the tub first.
Yeah.
Right. Clean the tub first. Oh man. But anyway, so obviously we hope everybody is staying safe out there. And our friends over at DMO Knives listened to the podcast last week, and they were loving hearing about that their knives made it into the podcast. And we support some great people out there, and we want to make sure all of our friends are safe and whatnot. But we don't want to waste any time, and we want to get right back into where we left off last week. So if you haven't caught last week's episode, obviously go check it out or pick up where we are now. We were discussing Hollywood gun battles, and are they real? Are they viable? What can you learn from them? Last week we had picked out and talked about a couple of different movies and kind of what we liked and things that we thought were pretty accurate. And today we're going to go into depth a little bit more with those scenes, with those movies. Some are obviously entire movies, some are particular scenes from movies, but kind of, our takeaways from that. And are they good training pieces, or are they good tactics, if you will? So I think we ended last week with the way of the gun.
Yeah, we started kind of scratching the surface on the way of the gun. And then it may have been the afternoon we recorded the podcast last week that I went back and watched it again, because I haven't I mean, I've seen the movie several times, but I probably haven't watched it in maybe 3 or 4 years. So I went back and freshened up on it a little bit. And there is a lot of good stuff. I think most of what we already said about the way of the gun is valid, but in watching it again with a fresh mind and an eye specifically towards that kind of stuff, unfortunately, I can't remember if we said that the way of the gun should or would fall into that gold standard category, but I'm going to retract that a little bit, because in the final scene, there is some goofy stuff that they do.
Sure.
Just one quick example is, Ryan Phillippe is, he's wounded in one of his arms, and he goes to do a mag change, and he pulls the empty magazine out of the gun with his teeth. That's not really a technique that I would recommend, but so there's a few little goofy things like that. But
well, the scene where they were just unloading relentlessly on the column, the stone column where the guy's behind it.
Oh, yeah.
So much so where the guy, I don't know if they did it as a joke or not, but where they cut to his face and he's kind of just like the bad guy in it. He's just like, oh,
yeah.
And then obviously when they the shooting stops, he steps out and they make the final shot there to kill him. But again, it's just, they were working with not a huge resupply nearby. So why would they?
Well, this is one of the things that we talk about in the military, at least when we're doing these types of trainings, is like, and I think we've even touched on it in a couple of ways here, is that, no tactic is absolute. Like, no rule or rule of thumb or best practice or technique is absolute. Like, everything all the time is situational dependent. So we get locked into these methodologies that we do on a two-way range. Not a two-way range, on a two-dimensional range, meaning like a flat range, a gun range, a shooting range. And because this is the way we practice it, you kind of get like locked into that, like people call it like range theatrics and stuff. But when bullets are really flying in two directions, everything is situational dependent. And so when I'm training with a squad or a fire team, and we take contact, our immediate action is to overwhelm that threat with bullets. Right. Well, that's great, because I've got 9 dudes and we all have 210 rounds of rifle ammunition on us. So do that math real quick. And so, we can afford to spend the first 10 seconds of this contact, dumping rounds just in the direction of the enemy, and then start to make calls and maneuver. But when you're 2 guys against, I think it's like 7 in that fight. Well, so that's actually, I think it's 9 if you count the 2 guys at the beginning and then the reinforcements come in. Unless your entire belt from your belly button to your butt crack is just 1911 mag after 1911 mag after 1911 mag, like all the way around, you can't do what they did. And I point that out because what they did can be a valid tactic. Like, that's actually, when I worked with Naval Special Warfare, that was a tactic that it would be a stretch of the truth to say we trained to it, but it's something we tried. It's something we attempted. Was if you had because in little backstory, like in I think it was Ramadi, the SEAL teams came up against. Or maybe it was in Fallujah, or maybe it was both. But they would make entry into a house, and basic SWAT team tactics are you're making entry into a residential home where maybe there's some kind of hostage situation or some suspect barricaded. But once you breach the door, it's still just a residential home with lazy boys and couches and desks and a dining room table. But in Ramadi and Fallujah, they were making entry into these houses, and there were actually prepared, reinforced concrete machine gun bunkers that had been built into these houses.
Right.
So now your ordinary SWAT tactics don't work anymore, because you're facing down an enemy that's in a fortified position,
Right.
with a belt-fed machine gun. So one of the tactics we tried is and we tried it and we trained to it a little bit. I don't know if it's something that's trained to anymore. As far as I know, the days when we were trying it out, it was just to try it out to see if it worked, and it did. But kind of the guy behind the pillar, and they kept dumping rounds on him. That can be a valid tactic. And one of the ways that we tried it is if there's a barricaded enemy at the end of a hallway or around a corner that's inside of a prepared position, because stairways come down and it forms a triangle, and you could fortify that dead space underneath the stairway and turn that into an improvised machine gun bunker. So if you were taking fire from a prepared fortified position, like at the end of a hallway or around a corner, you could get two guys to kind of go high and shoot high, but continuously put a stream of rounds against that wall. And you're not going to hit the enemy, but it's going to let him know that there's bullets. It's going to keep his head down. And you got to be with people that you trust. But a couple of guys would sneak under and get right up to the corner. Then the guys would stop shooting, and then we'd pop around the corner. And we actually found that to be a valid tactic. Again, if you're with highly trained people that you trust. And so suppressing that target and keeping him behind that pillar would be a valid tactic if you had not unlimited ammo, but if you had, probably a lot more than those two guys would have had.
Right. And just to go
ahead.
Well, just to go back, you mentioned, and you're correct. I mean, Benicio del Toro's character was carrying a 1911. So you are capacity limited right off the bat. You know, so like you said, even if he had magazines from his belly button to his back crack, what's that? Maybe 100 rounds, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking unless he had the 9-rounders, but I think that the point that you're making is 100% accurate. That is a viable tactic, but Hollywood seems to get it wrong sometimes with one guy and a pistol versus 12 guys and machine guns. That's not the case in the movie, but
right. And that's kind of where I'm getting at is that could be a valid tactic. Because in the movie they show it in a way where they were kind of doing a bait and switch, they were shooting, pause, shooting, pause. And I think in the movie they were trying to make him think they were out of ammo, and so they shoot, and then they take a little bit of a longer pause, and then he pops out, and then they get him. But to what end? Okay, you wasted 80 bullets in that process, but
exactly. And then not knowing how many more targets there was, I'd have to go back and watch that scene and realize, okay, did they know that was the end of the threat, and that's why? But do you ever know that? Do you ever train for the end of the threat? You shoot one guy once and he goes down, and is that threat eliminated, or do you verify? Right? I mean, so but you're right, there was definitely some wonky things, I guess, if you will.
And I mean, even the example I used, this is another example that makes me wonder, where he did the mag change and pulls out his empty magazine with his teeth. Is that something that Obviously, I'll go out on a limb and say that's probably not something that whatever the tactical advisor or firearms trainer would have recommended. But is that one of the times where the director just thinks that that's something that will look cool? Is this guy ripping an empty mag out with his
Right.
teeth? Is that something that the actor just improved and chose to do on the spot? So that's not a one and done like deal killer for this movie, because there is a lot of other good stuff in this movie. So.
And right around that same scene, that was Ryan Phillippe's character, but Benicio del Toro's character does a mag change and he's down one arm, where he does a mag change. Does he go between his legs while he's kneeling? I know he doesn't go behind the legs, but he does something where he basically takes the firearm is magazine or grip up.
I think he goes between his legs, like it like pinches the gun in between his two legs, like not behind the knee. And then I think he stands up and moves it up to his armpit. I think.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right. But yeah,
And this movie came out 23 years ago now. It came out in the year 2000. And so this came out pre 9/11. So the other thing that like I have to remember when I watch this is, having been in the military before 9/11, like all of our tactics that we trained on back then, all 100% of our CQB tactics at that time were all based on like urban police SWAT tactics at that time. And then all of our like I don't know, what do you call it, like open area, combat tactics were all based on like the limited combat that we had in Desert Storm. And so basically a lot of our like open area combat tactics basically were still based on like modified Vietnam tactics at that point. So since the year 2000, like tons of things have changed, because having 20 consecutive years of sustained combat in two theaters, where we had mountain warfare, we had tons of like real world CQB, and street fighting, and kind of everything in between for like 20 straight years. Like all of our tactics are night and day different than what they were in the year 2000. So I mean, whatever, we talked about, the article I read said that the director of the movie's brother had been a Navy SEAL and trained the actors for the movie. And so that, watching the movie now, that makes a lot of sense, because the tactics that he would have known, again, would have been those like modified Vietnam tactics, and would not be reflective of everything that we've learned in the 20 years, since the movie was made. So, but kind of like, to my point, like they did like a right thing and a wrong thing. And I think the movie illustrated it as a thing that could have been good under the right circumstances, but I think even the movie illustrated it as wrong. And it's when this is again in the final scene in that final hotel, when they're making they're doing the room clearing, they're moving down the hallways. I disagree with the way they were moving down the hallways, but again, I think in the year 2000, that probably was the way they were doing it then. They were moving down the hallway on both sides of the hallway. I would not do it that way now.
Yeah.
In that situation, but they find the hotel room where the girl is, and that's and then I can't remember who he was, but he was, because they're in Mexico, and it's like a
which
Mexican
is the who?
guy.
The Mexican guy, he was like the hotel manager or something.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So he kind of flanks them, and then that kind of kicks off the gunfight. And so Benicio del Toro has a Galil, and he just rocks it on full auto, and he does kind of a good thing. Like he does, he just shoots on full auto, like a flat line all the way around at a little bit lower than what would be, I think, like your average adult male standing upright. So a little bit lower than center, like all the way around the wall, which in number one, as long as you know that every single person in the hotel is a threat, because at that point you're not really caring who you hit. And then like shooting it at that level is good, because because most people are just gonna hunch down. They're not gonna get all the way down. They're just gonna hunch over. So that would be a good level to shoot at, to put people down. But in the first initial contact, he basically runs through all of his ammo for the rifle.
Yes.
And like, so right from the get-go, I think he runs through 3 magazines, and he does something that's really neat. And again, this is one of those things that could be debatable. It was the actor trained so well that he did this on his own, or was this a scripted movement? But at one point, he goes down and he does exactly what I do. To be honest, he goes down and reaches for a rifle magazine, and he runs his hand down his body to his belt, and then he runs from his belt backwards, looking for another
Right.
rifle magazine. Realizes he doesn't have any more, ditches the rifle, goes to the pistol. So like that's
Yeah.
exactly what I would have done in that situation, except I would not have ran
Didn't
through all my
and I
rifle ammo.
True. Yeah, and I think he actually went to his other pocket too, because
Yep,
he was wearing
that's
a
right.
jacket. So he fully checked all of his I guess stowable locations on this
Yeah,
on his
and
body, on his person jacket.
that's another thing that people think they're gonna do is like that. You have 4 magazines on you, and in the heat of a gunfight, you're gonna have the presence of mind to go, "This is magazine number 1. Now I have done my mag change, and I'm on number 2. Now I'm on number 3. Now I'm on number 4." I'm telling you, like that, all that goes completely out the window. So that's why it's important to build these conditioned responses. These people call it muscle memory, but that like I cycle through my magazines in a certain sequence every time, and it's for a reason that I talk about in my classes. But yeah, but that I thought that was really good because yeah, you're thank you for that additional little catch. He runs his hand down his body, goes to his belt, runs back, and then he checks his jacket pocket and then realizes that he's Winchester on his rifle ammo, and then goes to the pistol from now on. So that's kind of one good thing and one bad thing in one, but the way they illustrated it is that was kind of a dumb thing to do, to run through all your rifle ammo in the
Yeah.
first 30 seconds of
Yeah.
the gunfight, and now
Yeah.
you've got to do the rest of your work with your handgun. So good luck.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, it's funny because you just said it, like you have and it's good to have that muscle memory. And even last week, I was in that 2-day pistol class, and maybe twice in the day, and I was running a belt, and it was just pistol. So
Mhm.
I brought just a pistol belt. So I had a regular battle belt with 3 pistol mag pouches on my left, and then obviously a dump pouch. Um, and it's funny because we were, told to bring at minimum 4, but by the end of the first day, I was bringing 7 loaded mags to the line, and we would just run through drills. But at least twice in those 2 days, when I got done with the drill, I went, and it was not my first magazine that I had reloaded; it was the middle one,
Mhm.
because I did not run my hand down, run it back to that first magazine. I went through the mag change, and I went down and grabbed the first one, which was not the first one in line
Right.
if I did it the other way. So it's good to see that there are some of those, like you said, whether it's being taught or whether they know it in some of those movies.
Yeah, and so one of the other goofy things I saw was and this again, it makes you, when you start diving down, it makes you wonder, did they do this on purpose? Because this is kind of indicative of people that have like a little bit of training and a little bit of like experience, but like maybe not super high level training. Or is this one of the things that the director just wanted it his way because he thought it looked cool, and so this is the way we're going to do it? But when they're at the second motel that's kind of in the middle of the movie, and
Correct.
they make it seem like they've left to bring the other guys in, and then they kind of they ambush them like in kind of a sniper situation,
Yep.
and like they have a really cool gun. So we talked about earlier before the difference between good gunfight movies versus cool gun movies. But this was like in the sniper scene, he had the HK, the PSG-1 sniper rifle, which is a
Yeah, that's
super
right.
cool rifle, which is really, really, really expensive if you can even find one nowadays. Um,
Right.
but they did. I mean, this is like level 101 first day of sniper school kind of stuff. You don't. And it's something you see in movies all the time, is like when a sniper is shooting out a window in movies and TV, they have the gun barrel out the window. Like
Oh God, yeah.
no real shooter's ever going to do that.
Right.
And then in this movie, there's like a rocky ridge, and they've basically silhouetted themselves right on the top of the rocky ridge, which you would never do. You would drop yourself down a little bit so you'd be below the ridge line, and it'd give you better concealment and better camouflage. And his rifle kept making this like huge muzzle flash, which
Right.
ideally you would not have. You would have a flash hider, not some sort of massive muzzle brake on there. But again, it's one of those things that looks cool in the movie. So is that why
Right.
they did it? But
Yeah.
But the takeaway from that is don't silhouette yourself on the top of a ridge line. Drop down below the ridge line a little bit, and put a flash hider on your gun. Or, you know what the best flash hider is?
I mean,
Suppressor.
Are we going
That's
to
the
suppressor? I
best
was
flash
just going
hider.
to say, right? Yeah, and it serves two purposes there. So
yes, it does.
So sound and horrible muzzle flash, which makes you harder to kill. But anyway, or harder to find, I guess we should say, not harder to kill. We didn't put it on this, but what about the first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise? And I'm specifically talking about the scene at the end with the
where they're at the rock quarry, or
we're at the rock quarry.
Yeah.
And specifically, what's his name?
Robert
I
Duvall.
can't think of the actor. Robert, yeah, Bobby Duvall, with the M1A. What do you think about that? The way that he.
Well, I have I've watched that movie several times because I'm a big Jack Reacher fan. On one of my deployments, I figured out that I could go on Amazon and buy the paperback copies of the Jack Reacher books for literally 1 cent a piece. And so on one deployment, I think I read like 16 of the Jack Reacher books because they're really good. And I think in total, I think there's like close to 40. I read the first 16. And I really enjoyed them. But to the movie, number one, a lot of people complained that they cast Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher because one of Jack Reacher's fundamental characteristics is that he's this big, imposing guy. But the actual author of the book said that he thought Tom Cruise's attitude and the way he played the character made up for the lack of physical size. And I actually agree with that. I think Tom Cruise really, really captured Jack Reacher's disposition and attitude really well. So I didn't really have that big of a problem with that. But fast forwarding to the gunfight at the end and Robert Duvall, kind of given the overwatch with the M14 or M1A, whatever you want to say. Nothing really stood out as all that ridiculous about that gunfight. And they did a fair job at kind of because Jack Reacher was mainly picking up discarded weapons from other people. And
Agreed.
So really you only, if you're picking up somebody's discarded weapon, all you're going to have is the magazine that's in it or the ammunition that's in it. And they did well with that. And then this is one of the things that they always made fun of in the Austin Powers movies. It's like, I'm the good guy and I've finally captured the bad guy, but now we're going to stand here and have an 11-minute discussion about why you're such a bad guy and how I got you. At like Tom Cruise walks in, finds the bad guy and just shoots him in the head. And that's it. Like that. So I really appreciated that. But there's really nothing that stands out to me that was really all that ridiculous about that scene as I remembered, it seemed pretty authentic.
Yeah, not so much ridiculous. I just like the way that and again, whether it's something that they decided to put in or it was written that way or whatnot, but Robert Duvall's character wasn't sitting there with his gun mounted and, waiting to take a shot. Like he was, it was dark and Jai Courtney's character was up under lights.
Yep.
And he was kind of waiting for the shot to be taken by them so he could get position on where they were. And then he would kind of take that shot. And again, whether that's accurate or not, again, I don't know. I don't know if anybody can even speak to that. I mean, I don't know if you wait until someone takes a shot at you if you're in low light conditions.
It's a tactic, and again, like kind of going back to one of my other points, that was a tactic in Vietnam where they called it reconnaissance by fire, when they couldn't see the Viet Cong, they would just fire in the direction that they thought the Viet Cong were, so that they would shoot back, and then you could see their muzzle flash, and then you actually knew where to shoot. But most of the stuff in Jack Reacher, I mean, even like the sniper shot at the very beginning, and then Tom Cruise kind of breaks it down later, like how he knew the guy that they had framed for it. Like if this guy was a Marine Corps sniper, he would know that you should never take a shot, as it was set up. He's like, he wouldn't do it that way. He'd go up on the bridge with the sun behind him,
right.
and it would give him better egress routes, and like all that stuff was really good and really well thought out. They even got into like the hand reloading of the ammunition. The scene where Tom Cruise goes to the range and meets Robert Duvall, and Robert Duvall makes him do like the little marksmanship test, and
that was
great. The way Tom Cruise gets in his sling. So like that was, and like because
he's kind of laying upside down, right? Like,
and that's exactly how you do it. That's one of those things that like I feel like me and 9 other guys that saw that movie recognize that, but that's exactly how you do the old school traditional like high power rifle marksmanship. You lay on your back, you get in the sling, and then when you roll over on it, it gives you that last little bit of tension against the sling.
That's wild.
So they're that's a good pull. I don't know if you meant to talk about that on purpose, but that's another good movie that leads a lot of authenticity.
So I go back to, like I said, that scene with Robert Duvall and the way that he was taking those shots at the end. And I specifically remember that scene where he lays on his back and rolls into it. And I always wondered how viable that is today, if obviously if they're still teaching that or not.
They're
not. Okay. And when it comes to Jack Reacher, obviously the other thing that's at the end, and when he is, the one dude is killed and he's got to rescue the chick. And he has the AR, and he must have a magnified optic on it, because before he takes that one shot, he removes the optic and just goes to irons. To take that one shot, and obviously in the doorway takes a shot, and then to the other side of the doorway to stay in the cover, and he Hollywood makes the shot.
Just to poop on your point, just this little bit, like I don't think that was an AR. I think that was actually like the SIG 5.56.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was I don't know if it was a semi-auto rifle or not, but it was a MSR, modern sporting rifle, with an optic on it.
Assault weapon.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was an assault rifle. But he removes the optic and just goes to irons. And the only thing I can think of is it was a magnified optic, not just a standard red dot, which is why he did it. But not to get too far down the rabbit hole with Reacher, but did you watch the series?
I did not, and not really. I've had a version of this discussion with so many people. I did not watch it on purpose. To like honestly, the Terminal List, I did try to watch that, and I lost interest so quickly, exactly for the reasons that we're talking about. I think a lot of the military authenticity, and I think a lot of the tactical authenticity just wasn't there. It was a golden opportunity for them to like nail it, like what we talked about with Lone Survivor and Black Hawk Down and those. But with the Terminal List, they got a lot of the props right. Like, he was wearing the correct watch for that character, and he had the correct type of guns and stuff for that character. But I watched like 2.5 episodes of Terminal List and I was out. Jack Reacher, I actually did intend to watch, but it's like, I'm not a big TV guy just in general, but there's so much good content out. It's like every other day somebody's telling me, oh, you got to watch this show. Hey, have you seen this? You got to watch it. And like, I just don't have time to watch all of this stuff that people are recommending that I watch.
It's one of those things. I mean, when I watched Reacher, when the Amazon Reacher, obviously they picked the right guy. Alan Richardson is the book Reacher, the
Yeah.
size and intimidating factor. And it was a really good episode, or I'm sorry, really good series. And then the second season is coming out. Kind of, you brought it up, and Terminal List was on my picks. There were things that obviously annoyed me about it. There was one scene where I don't remember what episode it is, but there was one scene where they were moving through a village trying to rescue a hostage, and it was Taylor Kitsch's character and Chris Pratt's character and one other guy, and their tactics seemed sound, the way that they moved and communicated. But there were a lot of things in that movie or in that series that just kind of did annoy me. It was like, again, the one guy who could not be stopped by a large group of people at any moment. It's just like,
well,
I mean,
and so we're getting slightly off topic, but I'll try to make this quick. But
shocker
right
there.
I don't expect every movie that I watch to be 100% accurate, and just to put a fine point on that, I like the Fast and Furious movies. Those movies are completely ridiculous. They're launching Dodge Chargers into outer space and all this stuff. But the one thing I do expect is establish what world we're living in, and let's stay there. And a couple of examples I always give of this is I liked Sons of Anarchy up to a point. Because up to a point, then they deviated from what world we're living in. It's like, and in one episode, we're having a full-on, full-out Battle of Mogadishu gunfight in the middle of Charming, against federal agents, and like no other cops ever show up. Nobody ever comes up asking questions. The National Guard never comes. Nothing. And then like 2 episodes later, somebody's sneaking around the side of the house, and they gently break this window. And 4 seconds later, the cops show up, and it's like, okay, which is it? And then the other one is in the Punisher series, which I actually did enjoy the Punisher series on Netflix. But season 1, episode 1, he is in Laredo, Texas, up on this. Actually, now that I'm talking about it, I can't remember if he's back inside of a room or up on a roof. But he has this like ridiculously long sniper rifle, and it's like at this ridiculous cant, and he makes this ridiculous sniper shot from Laredo, Texas, across the border into Mexico, and takes out this Mexican like crime boss in one shot from like 2 miles away. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Got it. So we've established that the Punisher is an amazing marksman. He's a badass. He's a sniper. He's a Marine. It's a
comic book.
He just made this 2 mile shot. Okay.
Right.
Then we fast forward 9 episodes, and he can't shoot a guy that's 30 yards away, like on an opposite rooftop. Like, so which is it? Like, let's establish what world we're living in and live there.
Right.
So yeah,
I get that. No, I get it. I mean, some of these are a stretch. So the last week I brought up a movie to you that you hadn't seen. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that one scene. Did you check out Peppermint?
I feel guilty about it, and I did not.
You did not. That's okay.
I did not.
All right. And then obviously you saw Extraction 1 and 2.
Yep.
And now you and I had a conversation about Extraction, the first one. And just, obviously for content of this, the guy who did all of the I don't know if it's tactics, if it's firearms consulting, whatever. The person who did all of that, this is how you would do this. This is how you would clear this room. Is Kyle's AI, Chili Palmer. And I mean, he's a friend, and we have some good conversations, and I joke with him a lot. I saw him back in July up at the SIG Academy, and I asked him about some of because Extraction 2 had like just come out. And so we were talking about some of the stuff that's on there. So, pretty real stuff. And obviously Chili was in the unit with Kyle, I believe. I believe so. Or he was he served with Kyle.
I'm agreeing to good stuff being in the movie. I don't know the gentleman you're talking about, so I can't speak to his military record.
Got it. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm calling it out the right way, so we'll just leave it there. But during Extraction 1, I remember you and I talking about it was the scene where Hemsworth goes to get the kid right in the beginning.
Yep.
And he had done a mag change or cleared a malfunction or something, but he did it off of his, I think he did it off of his vest.
So yeah, so he I know exactly what you're talking about. So first of all, like the I was less of a fan of Extraction 2. Extraction 1 had some lots of really good stuff, and I like it when they put this stuff in there that, like, you know, like people like my dad that watch the movie probably didn't even notice. But so he's like fighting, like, you know, like physically fighting with this you know, this enemy soldier or whatever. And so he's grabbing a hold of the guy, and he's maintaining a hold of the guy with his left hand. So he pulls his pistol and he shoots the pistol with his right hand, but he kind of has the pistol like against the guy.
Yes.
And so that induces a malfunction into the gun, and he taps the gun against his plate carrier, which is exactly what you should do with one hand. And then he racks the gun on the edge of his plate carrier, which is that's the way I do it. You catch the rear sights of your handgun on the outer edge of your plates and rack it. So he does a perfect one-handed tap, rack, bang, you know, in full tactical kit. He taps the gun against himself, racks it on the edge of his plate carrier, and then shoots the guy, you know, again.
Right.
And so that whole sequence, I mean, it took me 10 times longer to explain it than it actually took it in the movie, but that was a great little nugget there that was tactically perfect in my opinion.
But and if I remember correctly, you correct me if I'm wrong, I remember we were talking about that scene, and you had said like it was almost deliberate, like they wanted you to really focus on it, like or I don't remember exactly what the context of it was.
Well, like the scene I talk about in Shooter where he does the tap, rack, bang, like it's so quick that I maybe I'm giving Mark Wahlberg way too much credit, but there was no attention drawn to it, and it was so quick that I've always kind of lived under the assumption that Mark Wahlberg was just trained fairly well, and he just did that on his own, and they just happened to catch it on the camera. But yeah, I think in Extraction, I think that was choreographed to draw attention to that for people like you and I think. But.
Yeah, you're probably right. I agree that one was a little bit more. I don't know what the adjective I'm looking for here is, but I did like one a little bit better. Two, it seemed to get a little bit more crazy with the helicopter and the you know, the belt fed on the roof of the thing, on the roof of the train. The dudes showing up, like you said, in the middle of this city with like, it was like full RoboCop gear on. I mean, they were fully, you know, kitted up. What was cool though, and I don't know if you noticed it, but they weren't Hemsworth was not using an AR-15 in that. Like he had it was AR-10 because you looked and you saw the magazines. It's funny, Dan pointed that out, and I confirmed it with Chill. I was like, did you guys switch to the 308 at the end? And he was like, yeah, that's what he was carrying, or he was using. But you know, some of that stuff was pretty, you know, pretty authentic. The whole situation in the prison with the escape. Again, some of the stuff was, but you're talking one guy versus all of the inmates. It's like, okay.
Well, and it's, I mean, like one thing, like I've always said about the Fast and Furious movies, like in the beginning, they were like, well, no, like the first Fast and Furious movie was Point Break with race cars instead of surfboards. I mean, it's the exact same plot line, the exact, like everything. But at some point, like around the third or fourth movie, Fast and Furious stopped being race car movie and started being a superhero movie. Like now, like the Fast and Furious movies that are coming out now, they are full on superhero movies, like
100%.
You know, not all that different from Marvel movies.
No.
And so on to a lesser extent, that's the way Extraction 1 and Extraction 2 were. Like Extraction 1 and 2, or I'm sorry, Extraction 1 was ultra authentic, like super good tactics, super cool little Easter eggs, like the one we just talked about with the tap, rack, bang, like for people like us to pick up on and all that stuff. And then number 2 kind of started getting into like John Wick territory, where it almost is like becoming a superhero movie instead of you know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, when you start seeing Vin Diesel's character um, punching through concrete blocks, and you're just like, all right, what's going on here? So you make a good point of establishing the world we live in, and then just kind of sticking
Yeah.
to it. So if you're gonna make these movies like this now, then that's fine. But
And then
I
just like
like
a total non sequitur, there's a new Mission Impossible movie out, and did they spend like $0 on advertising? Because I didn't even know about it until
you
one of my
didn't
friends
you didn't
told
know
me about
about.
it over the weekend. I did not, and I love the
Oh
Mission
wow.
Impossible movies. So,
Dude, it was really good.
oh, you've seen
And
it?
it's a oh god, yeah, man.
Ah,
It was a part one of part two. So just be prepared to walk out the theater going, shh, damn it. But yeah, I so you don't like TikTok. But like I said, there's some
no, I
gems
don't.
out there. But Tom Cruise, I think he promoted this by literally doing a marketing commercial of him jumping out of a plane and filming it like while he's free falling. I mean,
So
that's a
on
dude that's
Instagram, I saw that it was like a behind the scenes little like 1 minute clip on Instagram of them filming some like big motorcycle jump scene with him where he was like
oh yeah,
actually doing it and he was
he
actually
did
the
it.
one on the but like I had no like because I just saw that clip recently, so then that I guess that made me think that maybe the movie was going to come out 4 or 5 months from now, and but no, but it's out now.
Nope.
I need to go see it, I guess.
Yep, yep. I don't know if it's still in the theaters, but yeah, that motorcycle scene was intense. I mean, that's a guy who has literally, I mean, I think in the second Top Gun, the plane that he flies at the end with
The P-51,
the
yeah,
female P-51, that's his.
that is actually his
I
aircraft.
believe
Yeah,
that is his aircraft. So, I mean, there you go, man. Like that's a dude that has definitely uh, wrapped both hands around his skill set, his career, and
well,
I
for all the
mean,
crap and craziness you could say about Tom Cruise, I mean, number one, for right or wrong, better or worse, like Hollywood actors are Hollywood actors. I don't listen to them to determine who I'm going to vote for
God no,
or anything
no,
like I if I enjoy a movie, I'm going to go out like because I know like uh a lot of people have been like, I'm never going to go watch a Liam Neeson movie again because he said something that was anti-gun and he makes all his money off of making pro-gun movies, which fine, but like it's they're actors, they're douchebags, and these are movies. But
right,
um Tom Cruise has done that all the way through his career. I mean, like after Days of Thunder, like he actually started like racing cars for real, and after the first Top Gun movie, he became a pilot like for real, and so
yeah,
he's done that many times throughout his career, like actually, you know, starting to do the things that he does on screens, which I think
yeah,
is cool.
yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, actors are actors, and that's all that they are. Like you just said, I don't stay in your lane and make entertainment for the rest of
yeah,
us, but they've got zero sense of reality when it comes to $5.89 gas. Like it doesn't like those are things that don't matter to those people. So just
yeah,
shut up, make your movies, collect your awards, and thank whoever you need to when you collect your awards, and leave it at that. Ricky Gervais, I think, put it best in that. Remember when he was just
oh yeah.
ripping? Oh God, like he put it best. Um, so with all that being said, with these movies, what we're talking about is kind of is picking apart the realistic pieces that is kind of rolled up in this entertainment.
I think um I think John Wick is a really good example of
This is a tough one,
no,
but
I mean,
yeah,
number one, just back to one of my first points, like John Wick, super cool from a gun movie standpoint, but almost everything, like you and I have talked about this offline before as well, like when they got to the point where his silk suit is somehow bulletproof and he uses it like a vampire cape and he can deflect bullets, like now we're getting a little bit ridiculous. But like other than that, like the tactics and techniques and movements and stuff that he does with the gun, they are like for the most part is all like actual valid tested and trained tactics.
Okay.
But no matter how good you are, no matter how awesome your guns are, and no matter how good your tactics and techniques are, you cannot go against 200 guys and win by yourself. You cannot do it. Like it's
Exactly. So I
so
want to step back to that. So John Wick 1 is is where it kind of ended for me. Have I watched them all? Yes. Do I? Yes. Is it because I like movie popcorn more than the actual reality of that movie? Yes. The first one was I enjoyed watching it. Obviously, anybody that's listening to this can understand how that first one blew up. I mean, that's where you saw Keanu running a pistol and a rifle on a range in California, and everyone was, I mean, that went viral.
yep.
And but his tactics or technique in that movie was based off of the um was it central axis
Center axis
car, the
relock.
car that's it, relock car. um Now, do you teach that?
I don't teach it. I have done it. I've had it taught to me and I've done it. But as somebody that's done it with a real gun with real bullets, you cannot do it for very long. It's because when you're shooting the gun tucked, because it's valid in application because you're centering the gun on your body. So it's basically as long as your grip and orientation on the gun is correct, it's kind of like wherever your nose points is where the gun is pointing. Um, and so at a close range, 7 yards or in on a man-sized target, it's high probability that you're going to get a hit. But having your gun all the way like basically under your chin, and you're just giving yourself just enough room for the gun to cycle. So there's this little miniature explosion going off like right under your
Right.
what sinus cavity, and like every time you shoot your gun, it's not like a full punch in the face, but like if I was just giving you like I'm in the Navy, sorry, like we do like the little sack tap thing, but it's like if I was like sack tapping you in the nose every time you pull the trigger on the gun, that's what it's like. And so you can
Right.
only do that for a short amount of time before it really it kind of starts to become painful and
Yeah.
disorienting and all that. So
Now for those that aren't familiar with it, you can look that up. Here's the thing. It looks cool for Hollywood, but as Jamie
yeah,
just explained, it doesn't work that great. And if I remember correctly, it's you're also shooting with your left eye, right? You're using your left eye.
I've never heard that, and I shoot all the time with both eyes open, so I don't
Okay.
because you really,
I don't.
if you're doing it the way I was shown and taught to do it, you really can't reference your sights anyway, because the gun
Right,
is
because it's
really
all,
tucked up.
yeah.
It's tucked all the way basically underneath your chin. But I'm like, uh, it can be a valid tactic for maybe 2 to 4 shots, and after that, it becomes really unpleasant.
And if I remember correctly, again, it's been a while since I watched the first one. I think he does switch from traditional where he's fully punched out and then moving, and then he kind of pulls it in for those situations where it's within 7 yards or whatever. But
I think you're right, but I think kind of to your point where you were kind of done with it after number one. In number two, he shoots center axis relock like it. Having not watched number two in a little while, like maybe I think last Christmas when my mom was here, we watched all of them like in order. But so that's the last time I've seen number two. But it seemed to me like he was shooting center axis relock pretty much all the time in number two.
yeah,
Which
which just again, it's aggravating. Two lost it for me when, in the middle of a gunfight, we stopped to put on a 3-gun belt and then start doing quad loads, which we won't get into that. We've gotten into that many times offline. And then 3, you lost it for me when you had the typical horde of bad guys come in with motorcycle helmets that were now fully bulletproof, and
yeah,
in order to combat that, you give him a MPX. I think he was shooting a pistol caliber carbine,
yep.
because that was the hot gun that was being modified at the time. We will just leave that right there.
So like, I really like, again, not to go too far on this tangent, but I really didn't like number 3 at all. Like, I think because there's been 4 so far, and to my knowledge, they're not going to make a number 5 if you've seen the end of number 4, but they are making a spinoff series that centers on the hotel. So that may be interesting, but like I think like in order, I think number 1 was the best one. I actually enjoyed number 2. I thought number 3 was crap. Like I would go so far as to say I didn't even like number 3, and then number 4 I thought was as good as number 2. So, but
the only thing that I liked in number 3 was the and it was only for the highlight of the dog species at the time, but you can tell what was hot in the industry at that point.
Yeah.
But the Belgian Malinois scene where they were using the dogs. But again, that was the extent of it. 4,
but
quite honestly, 4 for me. Yeah.
I'm the West Coast dealer sales rep for Landtac USA. If anybody out there needs Landtac stuff, and I sold them several Landtac dragons for them to use in John Wick 3. So it's the scenes where Keanu gets to Halle Berry's little compound, and you can see that if you watch closely, you can see that a lot of the guns have Landtac dragons on them.
There it is, very nice.
So
4 lost it for me. With the whole, again, we're using our blazers as bulletproof vampire capes.
Yeah.
And they're taking the bullets point blank, but then somehow this little Asian girl is able to climb up this guy's back with knives and stab right through his bulletproof vest. I was also
there is a little bit of realism to that. There's a very famous you might even be able to find it on YouTube, but there's this really famous video where this company in Australia made these jackets that were made out of some type of woven Kevlar, and they could stop like a pistol round. And like on like live television, the guy the guy takes the jacket off for them to shoot it, and I think they shoot it, and I think they show that the pistol, there was a 9mm bullet or whatever, they show that it did not penetrate, and then he puts it on and tells the guy to like, here, stab me with this knife, and the guy stabs him in the back, and it actually goes through the jacket and stabs the guy.
Okay.
So so there may be a tiny bit of authenticity in that, but yeah, I'm not gonna.
But are we talking? I mean, A, we're not going to try it, and B, soft armor versus a blazer thin material are 2 different things. But again, we're going down there, so let's just go back to the John Wick series as far as tactics and realism. I mean, does it even come close to ranking as far as, what you can take away from this is, with.
No, I just wanted to make the point originally is why I even brought up John Wick, is because there are, like, I mean, the way he does reloads, I mean, even though I don't think there is and possibly ever will be an instance where somebody's quad loading a shotgun in a combat situation, but like that is a real thing. The way Keanu does his reloads is a real thing, and I need to watch it again, but I think there's times where like it shows him and he's got like I think he's using a Blade Tech holster and mag pouches, and like he's got 2 mags in his mag pouches, and he goes through both of them, and then like the camera cuts away and cuts back, and there's like more magazines in his mag pouches again. But the way he does his reloads are good. I mean, him quad loading the shotgun, that is a valid thing that exists in the real world. You wouldn't really do it in combat, but so, and the center axis relock thing, again, that is an actual thing that you can learn and do, but you can't do it the way he showed in the movie. So it's a good example of, even though like overall, like you couldn't be John Wick, you would be killed in the first 5 minutes. Even John Wick couldn't be John Wick, but there are small things that you could take away from it, But
sure, and you're right. I mean, his reloading. Now, I think they even did like a satire on this. Somebody did just a big giant satire video on the mag flip. I mean,
that was
and,
that was Dynamic Pie it's what the YouTube channel was, and if
where
you're
he
it's the
just
one where they flip it out and then it like goes and stabs in the neck or whatever.
yeah. You know, I think I've heard you in a class when you were talking about, doing a mag change, like let gravity happen, like the mag will just fall out. I don't know that there's any reason to mess with it if it doesn't. I will say that there were a couple of times in class last week where I had to give it a little bit of a kind of a shake to help that Glock mag fall out. I mean,
Yeah, so
the
I
Glocks don't
teach
have a lot of weight.
for pistol. For pistol, there it's a higher probability that the magazine is going to just fall out. But like the way I teach it is, what you should do is, regardless of whether the magazine falls out or not, you should already be reaching for your reload. And then if by the time you get to the gun with your fresh reload mag and the other magazine has not fallen free, then you can physically strip it and then very quickly insert your reload magazine, instead of realizing that your hand is halfway to your reload and then going, oh, this magazine didn't fall out, then reaching back to the gun, then reaching back to your belt, then coming back to the gun again.
Got it.
It's more economy of motion for you to just go ahead, whether the magazine falls free from the empty magazine falls free from the pistol or not. Go ahead and scoop up your reload magazine, and when you get to the gun, if the magazine is still there, strip it and insert your reload magazine. And if the magazine's gone, just go ahead and go for it. On the rifle, I am a big proponent of physically stripping the magazine every single time, because I reload from a plate carrier most of the time. But if you've got two hands on your rifle and your support hand is out front on the forearm, the handguard, forearm, whatever you call it, of the rifle,
you have to pass go.
You have to pass that magazine anyway. And I would say maybe like when I'm out doing drills and training and teaching classes and all that stuff, I would say it's a low probability, but I would say maybe 2 times out of 10, maybe 1 time out of 10, the magazine doesn't fall free, but you can turn that 10 to 20% situation into a 0% if you just strip the magazine out every time. And since your support hand has the pass there anyway, you're not losing anything by doing it. So, so that's my take on mag changes.
Okay. Yeah. So there is something to take away from that.
No big mag flips though.
No big mag flips. No, I would not go that crazy. So that kind of rounds us out there. I don't think that we were going to be able to do this episode in part 1, part 2 without getting into a John Wick thing, because John Wick,
it's
people
so popular.
refer to him.
It's such in the zeitgeist.
It is, and it's it's just out there. Obviously, there's a bunch of Hollywood actors that are getting trained in California by Taryn, and you can't really take anything away from that. I mean, Taryn can shoot. And even going back to it's funny, we were talking about shooting and marksmanship and everything last week in the class, and one of the things that Kyle brought up, and he speaks very, very highly of Rob Latham. And Rob Latham came to Bragg to teach. I just looked down at my phone as I got a vibration that it is Kyle texting me about something, but it's weird if he's listening. He talked about Latham coming to Bragg to teach his guys how to shoot better. He talks about it all the time. Like, and Rob was very good with saying, my job is only from when that gun comes out of the holster. That's it. That's the only thing I'm here to teach you. Anything leading up to that, tactics, movement,
right,
not mine. So,
Brian Nelson teaches the Marine Corps School of Infantry now. Like, again, like he doesn't teach the entire School of Infantry, but they've started incorporating kind of like, I've always referred to like competitive shooting, like there's bullseye shooting and there's action shooting, which action shooting is like USPSA or IPSC or whatever. And for a long time, the military was just stuck in this like importance of bullseye shooting, and we must stand static and get in a prone position and shoot a 300 score, in the 10 ring at 300 yards with this slow fire bullseye shooting. And again, that's a holdover from World War II, and kind of into Vietnam. And it was just like the military has just been stuck in that for 50 years, and finally has now started embracing IPSC style or USPSA style shooting. And like now, Brian Nelson teaches that at the Marine Corps School of Infantry, and I think that's awesome.
It really is.
Yeah.
So taking away, and maybe that's where John Wick, I don't want to say failed, because obviously it did not fail at the box office, but that's where maybe John Wick missed the mark. Is they focused on competition shooting. I don't, maybe this is not the right way, but there was not a lot of, I don't know if the tactics were there. So it wasn't, it wasn't so much. Yeah, I mean, we did stop in a firefight to put on a 3-gun belt and quad load. So, but so that was it. The actor was taught to shoot fast and accurate for movies. I don't think there was any tactics being taught.
I don't know if this matters to anybody. If anybody doesn't know this, like all the actual shooting sequences, they actually filmed with airsoft guns, so they could. It looks like he's holding a real gun, and the gun is cycling like a real firearm, and then they add the brass ejecting and the muzzle flashes and stuff in post. But so, as far as his accuracy goes, I don't know, but they did. Right. They filmed all the action sequences with airsoft, which I personally thought that was kind of cool. But
yeah, no, I think there's some validity to that, as far as for being as well safe as possible, as well as I guess giving it some realistic. But again, we couldn't really not bring that up.
Yeah.
On a scale of you're gonna survive the gunfight or you shouldn't ever do this, I would put it at the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to some of that being viable.
No, it's like, I mean, like I said, it that one falls squarely into the category of superhero movie.
Right.
But to give it, a little bit of credit where credit's due, like, some of the gun manipulation and gun handling and sure. techniques have some validity. But
yes. I mean, focus on that. Do not focus on the rolling around with guys and shooting them in the face while your leg is wrapped around their neck, because
don't think just because you can handle a gun like that and do a quick reload and get a couple of good shots off at center axis relock that you can take on 50 guys and win. You cannot.
No, you will not. So now, do we, in the beginning of this, you were watching something because there was a note that you had. What was that piece that we were?
If we had to, I know we're over an hour already. One of the movies I was going to talk about was Sicario.
Yes, let's talk about that.
There's a lot of good things in Sicario. It's interesting. Larry Vickers has talked about this before too. It's interesting that in the movie, the operators they're referenced as Delta guys, but like everything that they do and even the way their equipment is all set up and everything is very obvious that the actors were taught and advised by Navy SEALs, because there's certain little things that team guys like that are different from the Army. And one of the things, like, Navy SEALs love single point slings. I don't, I worked with SEALs for a long time. I do not like single point slings, but team guys love single point slings. And like in Sicario, you see that all these guys that are referenced as Delta guys, they all have single point slings, and they're set up in the way that team guys would set them up and all that stuff. But again, kind of what you said about Extraction and like that scene in Extraction being very deliberate. The little scene in Sicario when they're crossing back across the border and they get in that little gunfight in the cars.
Yep.
That is pretty perfect in my review of that. Like they that when they recognize the threat, they roll windows down, which is what you should do, because if you don't have to shoot through glass, you shouldn't, because shooting through glass causes bullet deflection. And then, like I talked about in the podcast last week, like if the car is no longer being used as a car, meaning in motion, meaning to egress, get away, transport people to and from some place at a high rate of speed. If the car is no longer being used as a car, get out of it. Get out immediately. Like, period. No debate. No room for interpretation. Once the car is no longer a car, get out, because cars are not good for cover. They're not good for hard cover. And so, but in Sicario, they do that. So step one, when they recognize a threat, they all roll down the windows. They lift up, like one of the cars has it's like an SUV and has like a little hatch that goes up in the back. They open the hatch, they roll the windows down, they stop the car as soon as the cars are stopped, and they're in basically like they're gridlocked in traffic. So they can't use their cars as cars anymore. So what do? They immediately get out. It's everything they do is in that little scene is really dead on. They did everything exactly the way you should do it if you're in a scene like that. Get out, go mobile. And then they trap the bad guys in their car before they can get out. I told you recently I had a kind of a situation like that, and where a person was being aggressive towards me, and he was walking towards my vehicle, and I had to quickly decide to not let this person get all the way up to my vehicle, because if I let them get all the way up to my vehicle, now they control the space, and now they control the tempo, and now they have limited my options. So the best way for me to not be limited and for me to control the space is get out of the car. So they all that was done really well. All their I liked that it wasn't some like wild gunfight with like bullets flying all over the place. Like it was, 5 seconds and just a few shots and it was done. And and that was really good. The thing I was looking back at, because I intended to bring it up in my notes, and again I intended to watch it before we started recording. Was the scene at the very beginning where the FBI SWAT team. I don't know if that's what I don't know if FBI calls it SWAT. Forgive me. But the FBI TAC team. Well, there's HRT, but that's hostage rescue. So I don't know if they have.
Okay, so maybe it's something different.
Like some other type of TAC team that's called something else besides HRT. Because in that situation they weren't rescuing hostages; they were just raiding a target. So. But anyway, I don't know. So somebody forgive me if FBI, maybe they don't call it SWAT. Maybe that is HRT, or maybe they call it something different. But when they're taking down that house at the beginning, and Emily Blunt goes in there, and I did want to call out that like the way they're moving down the hallways and stuff and covering each other, because the doorways that are down the hallway are kind of staggered from each other. In that case, you would want to be on both sides of the hallway, but in that, when they were the way they were running their stack, only one side was moving at a time, which like that. So that's another thing that tells me that they had some really good training and some really good tactical advisors that showed them how to do that. They were basically doing that the way that I was taught to do it, and then she enters the room, and the guy gets off he's shooting a shotgun from the hip. And so she breaches the door, enters the room. The guy shoots shotgun from the hip, and the round impacts right beside her head, but misses her. And she immediately falls to the ground, shoots him. And then it's weird because she flips her gun to full auto and like lets off like a burst of like 4 or 5 shots on full auto. And so this is this one of those things? I'm sure they did do that on purpose, but because her character was supposed to be like, I think she was, the light they were trying to paint her character in was like she was a little bit experienced and a little bit trained, but like also kind of a newbie. And so the AR selector switch goes safe, semi, full. So she just got shot at. She immediately fell to the floor, which is and in the movie, it looks like she did that on purpose, which is not a bad tactic. Except unless there's somebody coming in behind you, then they'll trip on your body that's now laying on the floor instead of up and moving where you should be. But nevertheless, it appears that she did that on purpose, and then she shoots the guy on her way down, and then flips the gun to full auto, and then like shoots him like, it's a burst of like 4 or 5 shots on full auto. But a person like her that was a little bit trained, and I see this in the military all the time, you've had a little bit of training, but you're not really at a high level yet. You don't have a lot of experience yet. She could have like accidentally flipped the gun to full auto.
Full auto
like that's
instead of
yeah. So I thought that was interesting, and if they did that on purpose, that's an interesting choice. But then, to me, as a person that's a firearm instructor and a person that's been in the military for a while, I also thought it was plausible that a real person that's the real version of her character, it's absolutely plausible that in that situation, this is the first time you've ever been in a gunfight. This is the first time you've ever shot somebody, and your adrenaline is just going through the roof. You absolutely could, because I've seen people do it in training, not even being shot at, accidentally throw your gun over to full auto. So I thought it's an interesting choice if they did that on purpose, but it was kind of cool, because I think a new person that's in a gunfight for the first time, that's there actually is probably a fair chance that they would do that.
Gotcha.
One of my friends that got out of the Navy and became a SWAT officer in Wisconsin. He was kind of a guy like me that he had been to training upon training upon training upon training upon training, and just like he never got the chance to deploy and never got the chance to be in combat. So he had all this tons of high level training, but had never been in a gunfight before. And when you're a police officer and you shoot somebody, it's standard procedure that they remove you from duty, they place you on leave, they do an investigation, all that kind of stuff. And so the very first SWAT op that he went on, he was the number one guy through the door, and I guess they were using MP5s, and he was the first guy through the door, and there was a guy, and he was going through the door, and he was going to go move left or sweep left, and he identified a threat, as he told me, that was standing in the right hand far corner of the room as he came in and moved left. And so I was taught that you come in, you see you keep moving, and you keep moving your sector. But if you identify a threat, you shoot him twice, and then you continue to move your sector, because the guy that's coming in behind you, he's also going to pick that up and go. Right. So anyway, when they did the investigation, they were like, why did you shoot this guy 9 times? And he's like, no, I came through the door and I saw him, and I engaged him twice and moved into my sector. And they're like, no, but you shot him 9 times. Why did you shoot him 9 times? And he's like, no, I didn't. And he did. And like when they went and pulled his magazine out, like there was like 11 shots missing out of his magazine. And he told me, he said, I had no idea that I had fired my gun 11 times. He's like, in my brain, I fired twice, but he really had shot 11 times. So.
Well, I mean, I think I've heard Paul refer to it. You probably have too. The fog of war happens, and I mean, it probably happens in competition. I know that it happened last week in training. Like we were, I know I probably did. I'm sure probably a couple other people. The string of shots you're supposed to take. 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. Next thing you know, somebody takes 3 shots there, then 2, then like, oh God, I mean, or you forget the entire drill that you're supposed to do, which, I mean, it happens. And the whole time you're just hoping you don't look stupid for the gram. So, it's, I guess it comes down to just continual training and whatnot. But
speaking of Sicario and continual training, like one of the down checks that I gave Sicario is like at the end of it, when they're in the little tunnels and they're shooting like under night vision, I could kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit, but I just want to make the point that like in the movie, they make it kind of look like a video game, and like where it's, hey, this is super easy. Put your night vision goggles down, activate your laser, put your laser on the target, push the button, and bad guy goes down. Like shooting guns under night vision, because I know a lot more civilians are acquiring night vision and stuff now, which is cool. I think it's a good thing. I don't have a problem with it, but that is I mean, even a shooter that's at my level, that is absolutely a perishable skill. That is something that you have to train on constantly. It's very difficult, and it's a skill that degrades really fast if you're not training on it. So if you're out there buying night vision and stuff, like, it is not like they show in Sicario. It does not look like a video game, and it's actually a very difficult skill to master, and it's a skill that you need to keep up on.
Yeah. So we go back to training, and
Yep.
Night vision is not cheap. So if you are going out there and spending that kind of money on that equipment, get good training.
Yeah.
So, was there any other movies that we had to go over, or did we kind
No,
of?
I wanted to clarify one thing that I said last week. I was talking about how awesome this movie was, because every single thing they did with a gun was right as far as I could tell, and it was a movie called Sinners and Saints. And then you texted me where you were like, "Hey, do you think this is a good movie?" And so let me clarify that right now. No, it's not really a good movie. The movie is on from 1 to 100. The movie's like a 62 maybe, but everything they do with a gun is correct. So no, I wanted to make sure people don't think I think that's a good movie. It's not Braveheart, but everything they do with a gun in their hand is pretty spot on. And then, like, one of the other quick points that I was going to make about Extraction, and then I wrote down the same point for Blood Diamond as well, is it's one thing to make somebody look like, a badass like John Wick, and to make this one actor look like they know what they're doing, and to make this one actor look like they're a total ninja. But in Extraction, they also do a good job of, like, at one point he's fighting against kind of like basic level trained. I'm trying to figure out how to say it, like foot soldier kind of guys. And they did a great job of showing, like, those guys were pretty authentic at that level. Like, if you're just a basic trained soldier, that's, like, contrary to popular belief, that's really not a high level of training. And in Blood Diamond, what's his name? His last name is Archer. I can't think of his first name in the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, anyway. He's supposed to be like a former British SAS guy, I think. And like the big famous gunfight at the end of that movie, he's going against these like conscript soldiers, which kind of like in Black Hawk Down it is also. And you really get to see this contrast of professional soldier versus these conscript soldiers that don't really know what they're doing, and they have at best a base level of training, because they're doing the thing where they're just like holding the gun over their head and shooting and doing things like that. So those things are also pretty authentic, and I like Blood Diamond, and I like I think Extraction is a little bit more extreme. Like, you've got extreme badass on one side and extreme non-badasses on the other side, and Blood Diamond is a little bit closes that gap a little bit, where you see, like, guy who is professional soldier that actually has some like mid to high level training and proficiency, like that. Here we go again. Training is a force multiplier against people that don't have it. And I think Blood Diamond was really authentic in that, because they're doing all those things that, that you see. I mean, you can look in the real world, look at videos of, I mean, you can find combat footage from Iraq where they were doing it. You can find footage from Benghazi where they were doing it. You can find footage of Mogadishu and Mogadishu is Somalia, where they're doing it. But like these, I don't, and again, I'm not sure I'm using the right term, but conscript soldiers, doing the thing where they're just like, and I think actually now, catch myself, I think you can even see it in Ukraine now, where they're doing the thing where you're just like holding your gun around the corner and just shooting, and you can't even see what you're shooting at, or holding it, you're down in a foxhole and you're just holding the gun over your head and firing. And if you're a professional shooter that's had some training, like, you as one man, kind of going back to the John Wick thing, like, probably one of you could take out 10 of those. If that's, So that was the last couple of points that I had written down to make. But
Okay, good deal.
professional soldier
Well,
versus conscript soldiers, and
I'm gonna go find out what the generic Cobra soldier was and the generic GI Joe soldier was, and
they
that's what
both
we'll
suck.
refer to those. Huh?
I said they both suck.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can call them from now on. That's what those guys are going to be. Whatever those
Hey, look,
characters
I've always
are.
said I love the A Team. I was like the A Team super fan #1, but those guys fired 3 million rounds of ammunition and never hit anything.
Oh,
But,
never,
you know.
never. Gosh, like stormtroopers. Um, that's what we'll call them, the stormtroopers
Yeah, there you go.
of Mogadishu. But again, this has been obviously a fun second part to last week's episode, and I hope that everyone that's listened to this got a good laugh and took away something about it. Some of these are going to be like this, and some of them are going to be stuff that you'll write down every note. But we love our movies and we love our firearms and our tactics. So thank you for tuning in for part 2 of our Hollywood Shootouts Viable and What Can You Learn? And until next time, you guys stay safe out there. Jamie, anything to wrap it up?
I'll just remember it's easy to be hard and it is hard to be smart.
There it is. All right, guys. Until then, we're out.